students, and welcome back to our Advice with a Pro series. Today we have with us Chris Boers, who is the service manager at Faulkner Infinity in Willow Grove. Chris, thank you so much for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So we have a couple of questions for you today. As your role as the service manager in an automotive kind of industrial field, our students are going to be working on a food truck project. And in this rotation of the project, we are having students design a food truck. So they're kind of thinking about, automotive / business needs. So we'll ask you a couple of questions today, and hopefully you can give us some insight on and help students with their projects moving forward.
Cool. Sounds fun.
Awesome. So question number one for today, we have, what does a typical day look like in your job? If you want to describe what is your job and just kind of give us a little bit of insight there.
So there's, as a service manager at a car dealership, there's literally about 80,000 things that happen in a day, and it's all over the place. But a general day typically starts for me. I get 15 or 20 minutes before I get to work, or before my day starts, I should say. I basically come to work and try and get as prepared as possible for the day. Preparation is key. So if you're not prepared for the day, typically it adds to a whole slew of bad things that happen instead of a nice smooth transition. So as I said, preparation is basically key. I'm constantly talking to my guys and girls about, being proactive versus reactive. And I'm a firm believer that if you get in, you always want to be 15 to 20 minutes before work starts. So that way you can kind of take a deep breath, absorb what has to happen throughout the day, trying to identify any early obstacles. And then from there, you can just kind of better navigate throughout your day without any aggravation. My first actual task, so that's about the first 10 minutes of my day, is just trying to identify issues. Then I kind of produce a sheet on the Google format for my guys that shows their production from the day before. Basically shows all the numbers and details of the business, see how we did from the day prior versus where we need to go today, and try and keep everybody on task. Again, the more prepared that you are, the less frustrating your day is. So we try and make sure that everybody has the tools that are necessary to kind of give them a good outcome for their day. Outside of that, once I identify what issues are out there, I have a to-do list that I check off every day. So minus the scribbling out here, looks something like that. It really is just about organization. So being organized is key. You get prepared, you get organized, and then you just execute on what you need to do and just cross it off your list. And coming to this food truck, all of that, as the students kind of unroll this idea and the project develops, they'll start to realize, like, wow, if I have a task line, you don't miss any dirty details, which ultimately give you a much better result and keep you on task. So it's less time and more organization is key. So outside of that, in the morning, by 10 o'clock, I meet with my warranty administrator to make sure that all of our warranty claims and everything that needed to get submitted to, I work for Infinity. So we make sure that our relationship with the manufacturer is on point. And to do that, we have to make sure that we're following the rules. We have to follow all the regulations to make sure that our claims are as pure as possible. And from there, everything else just kind of falls in line. But we have to make sure that every repair order that we put through to Infinity is, every I's dotted and every T's crossed, or else bad things can happen. So we do that. Then I do a lot of what we call MVWA, which in management world is managed by walking around. Just make sure everybody's on task, doing what they need to do, identifying issues, helping them just to solve things, to put out an ember before it becomes a fire. So it's a whole lot of walking around, making sure people are happy. If you notice somebody has kind of a doom and gloom face on, we have to kind of turn that frown upside down. Otherwise, it just makes for a not as productive day. So my typical days, again, I could go into a lot of detail, but that's kind of the synopsis of my day. Then there's a lot of Zoom calls and meetings and following up with customers. Obviously, we want to make sure we have happy customers or they don't come back. But I typically do all of that between 7, 10 in the morning. I usually get here, and I'm out of here between 5 and 5:30 Monday through Friday.
That's great. And you've touched on a couple of things from our next question too. We're going to talk a little bit about, skills that make somebody successful in your career. So I've already kind of heard you talk, organization, being proactive, those people skills. Are those some ones that you think are important? Are there any others that you'd like to touch on that students might want to think about or develop if they're interested in going to a business or automotive career?
Yeah, so I think you touched on it really well there with business in general. Automotive, there's just a lot of different angles, like every business, but there's a lot of moving parts all going in different directions at all times. So the first step I always say is you have to be positive. I mentioned a little while ago that I get here at 7:10. Sometimes I'll show up at 7:20. If I wake up and I'm just not in a good mood, I'll go for a run in the morning or whatever have you, so that you kind of burn all that bad energy out. So first thing is just staying positive. You're not going to get positive results with a negative attitude. The next step definitely have to be high energy because again, if you're spinning all these plates all day long, they have to make sure they don't fall. So you have to kind of be all over the place at the same time. And the biggest things that I could say is ultra high focus on extreme organization and making sure that you stay calm no matter how problematic a situation gets. Because when you escalate, the problem will only escalate with it. So stay calm, stay focused, stay organized, and just be positive.
It sounds like from what you're saying to you seem to really enjoy your job. You have really a positive outlook. What are the best parts of your day or the best parts of your job?
So first is my team. I have the team that I have now is very different than the team that I inherited 3 years ago. Some people transitioned into the new, more positive mindset. Other people, unfortunately, we had to part ways. But I've got a core group of 25 employees that work directly underneath me with no real assistant technically. So it's a lot of people and a lot of different mindsets to manage every day. But the team that we have, everybody has a yin and yang to it. So while one guy might be weak in this area, another guy's really strong here, and they work together to kind of play off of each other's strengths. When you get into management, a lot of people think it's just sitting in a desk or going out golfing all day, and that is so far from the truth. But when you have a good team, like I'm fortunate to have, everything just kind of rolls along, and they know that I have their back as much as they have mine, and it's kind of a mutual respect type of thing that you have to develop with people. But the team is what I would say is the best part of my job. Outside of that, I like problem solving, and this job has a lot of that all day long. What else we have? And the perks. I mean, obviously, there's the management perks. I get a free Infinity to drive around in, and gas and insurance, and that's always a plus, especially guys in high school and gals in high school are going to learn soon enough if they're not driving already that insurance and gas isn't cheap. So it's nice to have that as a benefit just for working hard. You make your way up the ladder and you get those things.
That's awesome. So moving more into kind of maybe the more automotive side a little bit, our students in this project are going to be theoretically, maybe in the future we'll have a point where they can transform a food truck, but they're going to be theoretically transforming an old van or an old postal truck into a food truck. So they'll have to think about design elements, the practical stuff. How do you think that they could best kind of maximize the internal, external surfaces of the truck in order to, increase their productivity, to sell their business, and to best serve their customers?
So that might be a good part too. I thought about this one with the questions that came out, because when it comes to the business design, and I know the students are going to meet with a slew of different people through these types of calls, whether it be learning the legal aspect of owning a business or running the business on the managerial end, down to the nitty gritty of how's the truck going to look. There's a couple things that I actually was thinking about with this food truck project. And I think it's a really fun project because you can really branch off into anything just with the simple design. Let me think of the best way to put this. So if you're going to transform an old van or a postal truck or something like that into a food truck, that's going to be the last piece of the puzzle. Because once you figure out what the business is, then you have to find a way to modify that vehicle into meeting your needs. So for example, I'm thinking just pure mechanics here. You have the staff, you have the know-how, you have the legal background, you have the licensing. Now you need to know what kind of food are you serving. So if it's all going to be cold cuts like sandwiches and stuff like that, well, you're going to need a lot different equipment in that truck than you are if you're serving pizza cones or, lobster. I know see that over at the Williger Mall all the time. So you have to decide what you're going to put into the truck and then format it accordingly. All the while, you have to make sure, like if you're going to put in pizza, you're probably going to need a pizza oven. Well, how much does that weigh? Versus are we just doing sandwiches, in which case you probably just need a counter and a couple bins and a refrigeration system. Well, how much does that weigh? There's a lot of research that's going to go into that, because with vehicles, you have to understand those dynamics, because the more weight you put in the back of the truck, the more you have to stiffen up or soften up the suspension to kind of balance things out. Then the next question is, well, what engine's in it? Am I putting in 60,000 pounds worth of stuff, which isn't realistic. But once you put all that in there, is the engine going to be strong enough to pull the car from point A to point B? So there's all these different dynamics that come into it. So as the students kind of navigate through what kind of food are you going to sell, the next step, if I was designing this, is it going to be an ice cream truck? Well, now you need serious, sophisticated refrigeration technology, which weighs a ton and it takes up a lot of space, which is going to encroach into your usability in there. Well, now if you're planning on having 4 employees, are you even going to be able to house 4 employees in there? Probably not. So there's a lot of different dynamics that come along with that question that, until they have an idea of where you're going next, you're not really going to know the answer to it. me see if there was any of the other ideas I put down here, because I read into this report, and again, I think it's really cool. Another question is, some food trucks, most of us have experienced, going and buying something off of a food truck at this time. Some of them have a big door that opens off on the side, and you order here and then you pay right next to it. Well, some are so busy, they actually have like a tail section of the truck. So you order it from the side and then go pay in the back, and then go back to the side to pick up your food. Is that something that you guys are going to work with? Is there going to be like a little step down gate because you need to have a trailer because of the weight issue? So you're going to pull your refrigeration along with it. Like, all these different things play out. And it goes to show that when the students are done looking at this project, I'm looking at it from a 30,000-foot view, and they're building it from the ground up. And somewhere in the middle is where your business plan is actually going to overlay together. So there's a zillion different variables that have to be tied together before it can actually become a reality. And once you start diving into those nitty-gritty steps, the last thing that I could really tell them is you just have to plan ahead, be strategic, and be as proactive as possible, and start thinking, well, if I do this, what's the yin to the yang of it, right? Because everything has a positive and negative reaction depending on what you're going to do. So once you design where you're going to go, or decide where you're going to go, the next step is, how am I going to get there, and what hurdles am I expecting to hit? Because the sooner you identify those hurdles, you can modify your plan so that you can kind of circumnavigate around those issues so that they're not even real problems. You already addressed it proactively, versus, oh, let's try this and learn the hard way. And then you realize, oh man, I went one step forward and I have to go 3 steps back and redesign the whole thing. So proactive measurement, I can't emphasize it enough. Try and eliminate as many obstacles as you can before they actually become a problem. It'll save you a lot more time in the long run.
Awesome. So students, this is something you're going to have to kind of think about moving forward. You guys have hopefully already decided what your food truck is going to be. We've done some business proposals. So definitely start to kind of think about these questions when you're building your truck. Chris, is there any other advice, any other kind of like tips or tricks that we haven't mentioned so far that you would like to offer to students as they do start to kind of think about these details?
As things progress, there might be more that I would have to put on it. But again, in the infant stages of it, one is be positive, and more importantly, be realistic. Pipe dreams they call them pipe dreams for a reason. So you have to make sure that what you're doing is, a SMART goal. It has to be measurable, it has to be attainable, it has to be realistic, and it has to be time sensitive. So that's what SMART basically spells out. It's just an acronym for it. I don't know if you guys have heard that yet, but surprise, you'll hear it in the business world. So SMART goals, stay within that SMART structure, and everything else will follow its way out. As long as you're proactive, as long as you're positive, and you're being realistic and stick to your timelines, everything else will fall in line. It's really, running a business isn't hard unless you let other things get in the way. So if everybody has a process and everybody has a timeline and you meet those deadlines, like me personally, at this point, my job's easy. It was a nightmare 3 years ago. So going from that transition, it took 3 full years to modify and to change things, but it all comes from that dedicated approach and just staying the course every day.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. Thank you so much for all of the insight. Students, if you're interested in getting into contact with Chris and asking more about his job, if you're interested in getting into a similar career, we'll have some contact information and a way for you to ask questions. Again, Chris, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.